Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And today is Hump Day.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's Hump Day.
Woo-hoo!
Ronnie, how happy?
That's right, today is Hump Day. This is the day in which we attempt to begin the weekend, sometimes with success, sometimes not. But as we always like to say, the fun is all in the trying. Folks, it's going to be you and me today. We're going to have a good time. I'm going to be coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, you know. California is the place where I happen to be, but I will tell you right now, there is a resurgence happening here in California. Conservatism, common sense conservatism is starting to take over, or rather should I say uncommon sense conservatism, because let's just be honest, common sense is not all that common, especially here in the state of California. What tends to be the priority here in the state of California is what I like to call common nonsense. That's right. That's the nonsense that the left seems to believe is common understanding, but I don't know. I don't get it. I don't believe that it is. But anyway, it's just going to be you and me. Mike's not going to be able to make it to the program today, but we're going to be taking your comments. So if you're watching us live on Facebook, on YouTube, if you're watching us live on Rumble or Twitter, go ahead and comment. I'll be following your comments here. Just go ahead and comment, and if I find it to be interesting, I will go ahead and I will share your comments with the rest of the folks. Like I said, I don't have to agree. In fact, I enjoy reading comments and responding to comments that I disagree with. Just know that if I disagree with you, there's a decent chance that I might mock you at least a little bit, because not because I want to be hurtful or I want to be angry, but because it's fun. Yep, that's what we're all here for, right? We're here to have a good time. We're here to talk about the issues of the day, but we're also here to have a good time. So I hope that you will be willing to have a good time with me. Now, before we do all of that, though, we got to pay the bills, and that starts with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. Folks, they have the top of the line barrels available for you. That was easy for me to say. Whether it be rifle caliber or pistol caliber, any length you desire, you can find it at hitmanindustries.net. That's hitmanindustries.net. Then we have the California Republican Assembly, working to help elect conservatives at all level of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. You can check them out today at cragop.org. That's cragop.org. If you want to be a part of California's future today, you got to join CRA. And then we've got Hog Holsters, the best in concealed carry tactical holsters on the market. If you want to get yours today and you want to get it on a discount, go to hogholsters.com. That's HAWG, helping Americans wear guns, holsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right up there, and you're going to get a discount on us. So check them out today. Once again, hogholsters.com. Then we've got, if you are, put it this way, if you are part of a group, if you work for law enforcement, if you work for a shooting group or a shooting club, if you are in the military, and you're looking for an opportunity to get a discount on tactical equipment and tactical gear, looking for someone who can provide you with quality customer service in terms of making sure you know what you're getting, that you're getting exactly what you want, and it's delivered to you on time, well, guess who you need to hit up? uscombatgear.com. They have everything that you could use, right? They got cold weather gear, hot weather gear, wet weather gear. They've got hats. They've got boots. They've got gloves. They've got all things tactical except the gun at uscombatgear.com. Check them out today. They have the most competitive prices on the market. They have a huge selection, great customer service, and fast shipping. Veteran-owned and operated. Check them out today, uscombatgear.com. All right, once again, and it seems like every day when we're talking about what's going on, and we always start with a report, a winning report, where clearly the Trump administration, we're what are we at now? We are a little more than 2 weeks in, and Donald Trump still continues to win. for the people who voted for him. He continues to win for America. One of the few kind of social issue areas in this particular election that he said that he was going to step up on had to do with fighting against the, as he calls it, the quote unquote transgender madness. Now, this is not a judgment of people who decide that they want to live their lives as an opposite gender, but really what it has to do with, this has to do with protecting women and children, because so much of their agenda, of this agenda that is being pushed, puts children at risk and puts women at risk. And in this particular case, we're talking about protecting women and protecting female children. And it has to do specifically in the area of sports. We've done the reports about males, biological males who've gone through puberty as males and decided that they wanted to now identify as a female, now competing against females in sports, in their sports, and dominating in many cases. In a lot of cases, they're dominating. But even worse than that, in some cases, putting them at physical risk, right? Giving them access to restrooms and locker rooms for female athletes, also putting them once again at risk when it comes to, well, in some cases, and I'm not saying that people who are transgender do this, but I do believe that there are males, and I won't call them men because they're not men, because they're not, I mean, a man is a man. These are males who've decided that they want to take advantage of women, and they want to, what's the word I'm looking for? They want to molest women, and they want to get into the women's locker room and women's bathroom in order to be able to do so. Once again, two separate groups of people. I'm not saying the transgender people want to do that, but I am saying that there are males who use that issue in order to get into the women's bathroom so that they can do that. All right. They've done it to get into jails. And we've already talked about those instances where you have males who get arrested, all of a sudden declare that they're female. They get put in women's prisons, and now they're basically raping female prisoners. Anyway, all that having been said, Donald Trump has signed an executive order, once again keeping a campaign promise that he made to protect women's sports. And that executive order basically, and this is according to the BBC, it says Trump signs order banning transgender men from female sports. It says here, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that prevents transgender men from competing in female categories of sports. The order provides guidance, regulations, and legal interpretations that will enlist the Department of Education to investigate high schools thought to be non-compliant. Republicans say it restores fairness in sports, but LGBT advocacy and human rights organizations have described the move as discriminatory because we don't let biological males who have a physical advantage and in some cases actually create a danger to female athletes. We don't allow them to participate in women's sports. Anyway, the order, which goes into effect immediately, largely covers high school, universities, and grassroots sports. A number of sporting governing bodies, including swimming, athletics, and golf, have banned transgender women from competing in the female category at elite level if they have gone through male puberty. According to the White House, officials who briefed reporters on Wednesday morning, this latest order empowers the Department of Education to investigate how schools implement Title IX, a U.S. law that bans sex discrimination in federally funded education programs. The administration official said that the executive order will reverse the position of the Biden administration, which in April last year said that LGBT students would be protected by federal law, although it did not give specific guidance on transgender athletes. Quote, "If you let men take over women's sports teams or invade your locker rooms, you will be investigated for violations of Title IX and risk your federal funding," Trump explained. Now, why is this important? Why is this a big deal? Because there is nothing more important than protecting women and children. There's nothing more important than that. And this is, and I just want to be, this is separate from the how you feel about transgender issues. This is, I mean, even Caitlyn Jenner will agree. And Caitlyn Jenner is formerly Bruce Jenner, who now identifies as a female, walks around as a female, has female pronouns, but has specifically said that biological males have a distinct advantage, in particular if they have gone through puberty as a male. They have a biological advantage when it comes to sports, and that's the reason why you see someone like Leah Thomas, who was a highly competitive but averagely competitive. I mean, we're talking was in the top 400 as a male swimmer. All of a sudden, becomes the number one swimmer in the country when Leah Thomas decides to identify as a female. Does absolutely nothing in terms of taking female hormones, does nothing in terms of transitioning at all, just simply grows his hair long. And then, by the way, as has been reported in many of the locker rooms, parades around unclothed or uncovered, right? Dangling about for all of the female athletes to see, almost like it's some sort of a fetish for him. The reality is that he has an unfair advantage, and you only have to see Leah Thomas standing next to, for example, Riley Gaines, who has been an advocate, who was there at the signing today, who's been an advocate, who literally tied Leah Thomas. I mean, should have been the league champion, right? Was forced, because they tied, not only was forced to share the podium with Leah Thomas, but they gave the trophy to Leah Thomas. Not even to the biological female. They gave it to Leah Thomas and said, "Oh, we'll get you a trophy later." That's the sort of stuff that's happening right now in women's sports. Then there's the instances, and once again, we've talked about it here on the program, where you had the one basketball player here in California who literally was throwing young girls across the court while playing basketball. I mean, it was so bad that the team that they played, they injured so many. This transgender female or transgender girl or male teenage boy injured so many players that the team that they were playing against had to forfeit the game because they couldn't field a team. That's how bad it got. Right? You have there was another player that was actually there at the signing today, who was a girls volleyball player, who was likely on her way to college on a college scholarship, got hit in the face by a spike from a biological male, suffered partial paralysis, a traumatic brain injury, and is still dealing with the effects of what happened, of the injury, once again, from being spiked by a male athlete, by getting the ball spiked directly in her face. So, folks, this is about protecting these girls. That's what this is about. Whether you want to debate the issue of transgenderism or not, we're probably still going to agree. But that's not the point here. This is about protecting female athletes, and Donald Trump committed to doing that. And it's kind of funny because you have a lot of people in the the LGBT community, the lesbian, gay, bisexual community, who are like, "Oh, Donald Trump's a bigot. Donald Trump's a bigot." But the reality is he's the first person to run for president that supported same-sex marriage. That's right. He supported same-sex marriage when he ran in 2016. He's the same guy. Anyway, I'm glad to see him doing that. I'm glad to see him following through on his promises. When Joe Biden decided that he was going to just rewrite Title IX via executive order, and that's really what he did, because it's really, Title IX was created to protect women in sports, to make sure that women had opportunities to compete in sports. And that's the other thing that this is here. It's not just about protecting them, but their right to have a fair competition. And let's be honest, men and women, biological men and biological women, we have two different biologies. And one of those creates a significant advantage when it comes to sports, when it comes to many sports, and allowing a biological male, someone who was born a male, right, to compete against women in sports, I mean, that's a 90-10 issue. 90% of the people out there will say, no, that ain't right. No, that should not happen. And doesn't really matter what your political ideology is. 90% will say no, that's a no-go. I'm going to say if you are a father of a girl, I'm going to say it's like more like 97-3, right? You don't want to put your daughter at risk trying to compete against some biological male. So anyway, I think this is a good thing. Very, very happy to see it happen. Thank you, President Trump, for making this happen. And thank you for standing up and putting the full weight behind it, making sure that this is, in fact, going to be enforced. It's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out in places like California, where they're basically ignoring the law. They're basically going to be ignoring this. So I'll be very, very interested to see, because some of these schools are going to lose their federal funding. Now, I'll just be real with you. If it's like my school district, 7% of our budget comes from the federal government. I think it'd be tough, be a little tight, but who knows? We'll see what happens with some of these school districts. I know that we don't have that issue. We're an elementary school district, so any sports that we do have are co-ed. So, and once again, elementary school, they are prepubescent. So we're not talking about anyone who's gone through puberty. Anyway, all that having been said, congratulations or thank you, President Trump, for, once again, promise made, promise kept. In other news, you may have recalled on Monday there were protests for the quote unquote Day Without an Immigrant, which is a protest that I never really understood because, well, I guess it didn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because the whole point of their statement is to say, well, this is what it'll be like if you don't have any immigrants. Well, I made it through the day and didn't even notice. And the funny part, that's number one. Number two, no one has an issue with immigrants. People have an issue with people who have entered our country or are staying in our country illegally. Those are referred to as illegal immigrants. Those are the ones that those are the folks that people have an issue with. You can't call them illegal aliens anymore. Well, I guess you can, because that's what members of the Supreme Court refer to them as, is aliens. But because there is a legal connotation to it. But the left doesn't care about legal. They don't care about legal connotations. But anyway, all that having been said, there were protests, and there were a lot of people that were out that were protesting, but decided to do so while waving the Mexican flag, as we had noted previously. Well, down in Los Angeles, which is a hotbed for a number of these protests, the law enforcement was very, very upset because, well, LAPD was actually, they were ordered to stand down against illegal alien protests, and the rank and file were not very happy about it. This is being reported by former lawman. It says here, Los Angeles police officers reportedly withdrew from the streets on Sunday night as protesters waving Mexican flags took over intersections and freeways, blocking traffic in response to President Donald Trump's deportation policies targeting illegal immigrants. Independent journalists on the ground captured video footage showing LAPD officers in riot gear, equipped with zip ties and nightsticks, attempting to clear demonstrators from the streets. The officers issued a 1-minute warning for the crowd to disband before engaging the protesters. And here, I'll play a little bit of the video for you. You can probably, I don't know if you guys can hear it. No, I'm guessing you can't hear it. I can hear it in my ears. It's playing here for me. But you see law enforcement is just kind of standing there. They are ready to roll, ready to rock. And in the end, they move forward a little bit. Let's see. We'll go ahead and we'll watch the whole video. So as you see here, they're moving forward. They're not engaging, and the protesters are backing up. They're backing up. So they can see what's going on, which, by the way, they should be. They are illegally protesting. They don't have a permit. So they're doing their best to try and keep it peaceful. But then all of a sudden it seems like it appears that they have stopped. And now they're going to actually engage the officers. Okay, let's come down here a little bit. It says here, journalist Anthony Cabasa posted footage on X showing officers confronting the demonstrators. However, just as arrests were expected to be made, he reported that law enforcement abruptly left the scene. So in other words, they stopped doing what they were doing, they stopped enforcing the law, and they left the scene. And once again, here, this is from this is a direct quote. Just as officers were about to make arrests, all the officers just left. Cabasa stated in his post, "I've never seen anything like this," he continued. "Hundreds of police with zip ties, and all of them have just left." Cabasa reported that no arrests were made and protesters were seen celebrating as police vehicles drove away. And that's what this is right here. So in other words, the police were there. They were there to disband what was clearly an illegal march. People who weren't supposed to be there, weren't supposed to be marching, and they were ordered to basically stand down. They were not just stand down, not just not be there, not just be there and not do anything, but to actually leave. They were ordered to leave. It says here, demonstrators in Los Angeles and other cities across the country took to the streets on Sunday in opposition to Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration. According to Breitbart, Texas, the protests were organized in response to administration's effort to deport illegal immigrants with criminal records. Now, one of the things that I never really got about this is like, first of all, if your goal is you want them to be here, you want them to be here in the United States, right? You want America to accept them as legally here, as members of our community, right? Why are you waving why are you waving the Mexican flag? Why? This isn't Mexico. This is not Mexico. If you want to praise Mexico, then go to Mexico. Or how about this? How about we talk a little bit about Mexico's immigration policy, which, by the way, is far stricter than it is here in the United States. I mean, if you want this to be like Mexico, if you want us to accept you like Mexico does, well, then you should be getting the boot. You shouldn't be allowed to hold a job. Or no, you can't hold government jobs in Mexico if you are not a Mexican citizen. You can't own property if you are not a Mexican citizen. You can lease it for 99 years, but you can't own it. That's how they treat immigrants there in Mexico. So I'm just wondering why are you acting as if why are you promoting Mexico when you want to be here in the United States? Wave the American flag. And by the way, don't burn the American flag. There were some instances of people burning the American flag. If y'all want to be here, how about you not burn our flag? Not saying, just saying. Probably would make more sense if that in the end was your goal. Anyway, that now brings us to our next story. FBI agents sue to stop naming of Jan 6 investigators. Now, this is an interesting one because, and I got into a debate with a good friend of mine about this. They're like, well, why do they want to investigate the January 6th investigators? Well, there's a bunch of stuff for FBI agents who were involved in the investigations of January 6th. Well, there's a tons of reasons why. Number one, it was clearly a selective prosecution. All right, we know that there billions of dollars of damage was done to private and government property during the George Floyd riots. Nothing was done. Almost nothing was done. We know that 25 people died as a result of those protests. No major federal investigations. None. We know that thousands of officers were injured as a result of those protests. Once again, nothing. No calls for prosecution, nothing. Yet, they seem to go out of their way. They seem to go above and beyond in order to investigate J6ers. Now, there's an officer named, I think his name is Stephen Friendly, who actually wrote a book called True Blue. He's an FBI agent who was involved in some of these investigations, who was on the inside and raised questions about how it was investigated, about how they went about prosecuting these cases. and was summarily disciplined because he asked those questions, because he thought that they were being treated. He thought that those who were being investigated for January 6th were being unfairly prosecuted and persecuted. We have instances of people who got arrested for January 6th. In many cases, as we now know, they were let in and in some cases guided through the Capitol by Capitol Police. And yet they were charged, they were arrested, and some of them sat in jail for over a year in solitary confinement. I was just listening to an interview with Enrico Tarrio, who was the head of the Proud Boys, who got 22 years, where they basically were doing things like moving him around every day, where they were moving him from one jail to another. They called it, what do they call it, diesel treatment or something like that, where they were moving him around, where they kept him locked up in these kind of shackles that were incredibly uncomfortable, riding in a vehicle, going from one place to another, not allowing him to be settled in any one particular place. I mean, they really did, some of these folks really did some really, really nasty stuff, really unfair. I mean, we're talking torturous type activities with some of these folks who were accused in January 6th. We also know that they withheld evidence, that the video evidence, the security video that showed that people were just letting him in, that there were Capitol Police holding the door open for them to walk in. Yeah, and that they were standing there and taking selfies with folks. That stuff was in fact withheld from defendants. They didn't even know that video existed. If they had known, some of the people who pled because they couldn't afford a lawyer to defend them, some of the people who pled probably wouldn't have. Some of the people who got convicted probably wouldn't have if this evidence had been made available to defense counsel. But it was withheld. Now, some people don't care about that stuff. Well, guess what? Donald Trump does. And that's why Donald Trump has come out and he said, nope, sorry. As far as we're concerned, we're going to go ahead and we're going to investigate. We're going to investigate the investigators. We're going to look into how this whole thing was prosecuted. And that's what this next story is about, is now you have some FBI agents who are suing to stop the naming of Capitol riot investigators. Now, I don't know if they're suing to keep the information from getting to Congress, to keep it from getting to the White House, to other investigators, or if they're just suing to try and keep it out of the public. I don't know. But anyway, let's read a little bit of the story here. This also being reported by the BBC. It says the Federal Bureau of Investigation officials have handed a list of agents who worked on cases related to the U.S. Capitol riot to the Department of Justice, the latest step towards an expected purge of the Bureau staff. More than 5,000 names were on the list, sources told CBS and BBC's U.S. news partner. Meanwhile, 2 lawsuits were filed on Tuesday on behalf of agents seeking to keep the names under wraps. The developments are the latest struggles over the future of the main U.S. federal law enforcement agency. President Donald Trump believes the FBI and DOJ under Joe Biden unfairly targeted him for prosecution. Yes, they did. Last week, new officials appointed by the White House at the Justice Department, which oversees the FBI, fired dozens of prosecutors who pursued riot-related cases. Those prosecutors also had worked for Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who brought charges against Trump for his alleged role in sparking the riot. Over the weekend, thousands of FBI employees were asked to fill out a questionnaire about their participation in the Capitol riot investigation, the largest in FBI history. Now, I want you to think about that. The Capitol riot investigation was the largest investigation in FBI history, not the thousands, not the hundreds of riots that took place during the summer of love, we'll call it, the George Floyd summer. Now, the White House and the White House spokesman, they come out very clear. They said, look, if someone was just doing their job and they were just following the law and following orders, nothing's going to happen to them. They're not going to be fired. They're not going to lose their jobs. But if you have people who are engaging in things like I don't know, threatening people to take plea deals by dumping extra charges on them, things that they clearly were not engaged in or involved in. If you were doing things like what Tario went through, the whole diesel therapy, whatever they call it, yeah, you're going to have some problems. If you were investigating people and going after people unfairly and unduly, then yeah, if you ignored evidence that showed that they were that people were actually allowed to just walk in, right? If you went after people who clearly were allowed to walk in by law enforcement, if you still prosecuted them, then these are the people who are potentially going to lose their jobs. If not, they're definitely going to be under federal investigation. And if they violated any laws, they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because they've abused their authority and they've abused their power. So I'm not saying everybody who was involved in the investigation did that. Clearly, as we talked about from the book, not everybody was involved in that, but there were clearly some folks who were. And those folks who abuse their power need to be held to account. And I'm 100% in support of that. All right, that brings us to our final story, and this has to do with the Virginia House passing the Defend the Guard Act, 99-0. Now, this is important because I think that in many cases, when National Guard is called up, and by the way, National Guard tends to get called up even more than active duty folks. When they get called off or they get deployed, oftentimes they can get deployed to be, put in situations where they are now defending the country, but they're put in situations where they're in places where we haven't even declared war. And so this was one, and Mike sent this one over. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here to kind of share with us his perspective on it, but I still want to go ahead, since I already had the thing, want to go ahead and cover it. It says here, this is from Responsible Statecraft. It says Virginia House passes Defend the Guard 99-0. The Virginia House of Delegates passed a bill on Tuesday that bars the deployment of Virginia's National Guard to active combat in a conflict that Congress has not explicitly authorized. I understand that war is sometimes necessary, but I expect Congress to display an ounce of the courage they expect out of the men and women they send overseas to fight those wars by fulfilling their constitutional obligation to declare war. Delegate Nicholas Freitas, a veteran and a primary sponsor of the bill, told Responsible Statecraft. The Virginia Senate will vote on the measure before sending it to the Governor Youngkin's desk for consideration. Delegate Freitas said he didn't know whether the bill would pass in the Senate, but that he and other supporters have, quote, put it on the best possible footing with strong bipartisan unanimous support. Yeah, 99-0 is a pretty big deal. That says that they pretty much are behind this thing, and that they want to make sure that Congress does their job. Now, you might recall, we were in a number of places where we were in conflict where war has not actually been declared, right? Or at least been authorized by Congress. And ultimately, that's kind of one of the responsibilities of the legislative branch. And in so many ways, the executive branch has expanded its power while the legislative branch has rescinded its power. And I think a lot of that has happened under Democrat administrations because, well, they know that once they're in charge of the bureaucratic state, and there's a reason why, by the way, they're coming down on Trump and they're coming after Trump so actively right now. And that's because Trump is going after bureaucratic state, because they realize when when Democrats are in office, they control it from the appointees all the way down to the civil service employees. But what they do is they get their folks in there at the career level, at the highest level, just below the political appointees, so that even when a Republican takes over, even when a Republican is in the White House, and the people that are supposed to be over that agency are Republicans, they still have their people. Their Democrat friends are still running a lot of these organizations and a lot of these agencies at the lower levels. So regardless, they still continue to do the bureaucratic yada yada mumbo jumbo. Anyway, I'm now that I think about it, I'm getting way off. I'm getting way off point and way off track. The point here being is that the legislative branch has subverted a lot of their control and authority to the executive branch. And one of the most important powers that they have in the legislative branch, in Congress, is to declare war. And this is simply saying, look, Congress, do your job. Right? Otherwise, Virginia ain't sending their National Guard troops. Anyway, good stuff. I would love to hear what Mike thinks about that. Guess we'll have to ask him at a different time. All right, folks, so that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces. Get your Hog Holster today. All right, I wanted to share with you today, and one of the reasons why Pete Hegseth was brought in was he wanted to bring back pride in being in the military, and he wanted to work. They wanted him to come in and improve the war footing, right? Making sure that the warrior mentality was put back into the military. And I wanted to share pieces of these two recruiting videos. One was under the old administration, and one is under the new administration. And I want you to tell me if you notice a difference. They're a little long. They're both a little long, but I'll show you the first one, and we'll talk about a little bit about it on the other end.
Sharpens iron. So
no, don't want to show you that one. I know that's not the one I want to show you first. This is the one I want to show you first. Okay. This is the one I want to show you.
It begins in California with a little girl raised by two moms. Although I had a fairly typical childhood, took ballet, played violin, I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. When I was 6 years old, one of my moms had an accident that left her paralyzed. Doctors said she might never walk again. But she tapped into my family's pride to get back on her feet, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and then attended UC Davis, where I joined a sorority full of other strong women. But as graduation approached, I began feeling like I'd been handed so much in life, a sorority girl stereotype. Sure, I'd spent my life around inspiring women, but what had I really achieved on my own? One of my sorority sisters was studying abroad in Italy. Another was climbing Mount Everest. I needed my own adventures, my own challenge. And after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way. I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my calling.
Okay. So you can kind of get what they were going for there, right? They were going for DEI. They were going for inclusivity. I mean, they literally, the only thing they could have done was made her Native American or transgendered or black. Literally, those are the only other things that they could have made her, and they could have done two of those, right? That's the only thing they could have done. And you wonder why the military was having a very difficult time recruiting. Well, now, here's a new one, and this one is specifically targeting or talking about the Green Berets. But I want you to tell me if you get a different sense from this recruiting video as opposed to the last one.
Sharpens iron. So one man sharpens another.
Not far from here on the hallowed grounds of Fort Liberty near the intersection of Rock, Merritt, and Ardennes, etched into the green marble is a quote from the 35th President of the United States. And it reads that the Green Beret is again becoming a symbol of excellence. a badge of courage and a mark of distinction in the fight for freedom. President Kennedy also challenged us and challenged our nation to go to the moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. I talk a lot about an article I read a while ago in which the author wrote about how today's youth, well, they're lazy. They're lazy in language and communication. They don't seek hard work, nor have the endurance to see it through. They are nor gritty or resolute, and they lack ambition. That article was from an op-ed in the 1938 edition of the Chicago Tribune. The youth the author talked about went on to parachute behind enemy lines in France and stormed beaches like Omaha and Utah, ultimately becoming the greatest generation. And as great as that generation was, I believe that your generation can be even greater.
In every generation, the challenge of one man to another turns deed into stone, and stone into legend.
Your song.
Now, do you see the difference? Do you recognize the difference? One is talking about, all of these things, you deserve and how you feel and all of these different, not one of unity of purpose, right? Not one of inspiration, of inspiring someone to not just do more, but to do more for our country, to do more for your brother or your sister, to challenge yourself to be more and to be the best. That's what attracted people to the military, right? It was the challenge of being in the military, right? It was the challenge of being the best, of being one of the best. And that's not what they do anymore, or that's not what they were doing during the Biden administration. Instead, they were going after, by the way, just so you guys know, if you don't know who tends to be more geared towards the military, it tends to be people of conservative leaning. It tends to be male. They also tend to be more Caucasian, although those numbers, that particular area is changing, but they tend to come from the South. Right? I'm using these are generalizations. I'm not saying that's who it is. That's who everybody is who goes into the military. But these tend to be the people, the most commonalities or common traits of people who go into the military. They tend to be people who are competitive. They tend to be people who want to be challenged. Now, you tell me which of those commercials actually does that. Go ahead. And if you say the first one, then you're watching the wrong show. Or you need to watch more. You need to just shut up and listen. But I can tell you right now, I know which one is more likely to attract people, to attract the people that we want fighting our wars. If we're going to demand that Congress actually do their job and declare wars, then we need to make sure that our folks are ready to actually fight wars. Anyway. That's my 2 cents. Anyway, gonna go ahead now and we're gonna go ahead and call it a day. I wanted to leave you guys with that because I thought you guys once again would. I know we normally do funny stuff, but I just wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of see that and just that moved me. And once again, I wish Mike was here because I would have loved to have gotten his perspective as someone who has actually served. Anyway. But that's that. Anyway, before we go, though, you know what we got to do, and that's we got to give a quick shout-out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries, rifle and pistol caliber barrels and length barrels available at any length, available for you at hitmanindustries.net. We got the California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Check them out at cragop.org. That's cragop.org. We've got Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces. Get your Hog Holster on discount today. And then finally, you can find all things tactical except the gun at uscombatgear.com. That's going to be it for today's program. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and encouraging your friends to do the same. We will be back tomorrow on Throat Punch Thursday. So y'all have fun, stay safe, and if you get a chance, make sure you send a few downrange. We will holler at you tomorrow.